Good evening. Today, we are going to begin our journey of read-alouds. No matter what grade you teach, even in high school, students love to be read aloud to. There are some things that you need to keep in mind when you read aloud to students. So here I've just created a short outline. Choosing your literature. So when you choose your literature, use your librarian in your school or the librarian at your public library. If you are at Randolph, we have a complete children's collection on the first floor of the library. So when our library opens in our new normal schedule, you will be able to access children's literature from there for use in your courses and use in your schools. Make sure that the literature you are choosing is developmentally appropriate for the age group in which you are going to choose. For this particular class, emergent literacy and reading development, we're going to focus on pre-kindergarten, ages 3 through 5, and kindergarten, first, and second grade. So I'm going to choose a variety of literature, and I'm actually going to model for you, my glasses are crooked. I'm going to model for you some read aloud techniques. You, though, have to make it your own. So once you decide if the piece of literature is developmentally appropriate, you also have to take into account the interests of the students you are teaching. You want to create a variety of options that you are reading aloud to the students, and make sure that it is something that you think your class is going to be interested in listening. So you choosing the literature is very important, and use other people as resources. Preparing for the read aloud. You want to make sure that all genres that you choose to read, you have thoroughly read through the book, the poem, the passage that you're going to share with your class. You want to examine the vocabulary. You want to think about, how do I want to introduce this book to my students? Do I want to talk about the theme, the plot, the genre itself? It really kind of depends on the age and where you are in the school year as to how much detail you want to go in with the book. Do you want the book to be a surprise to them? Do you want to do a walkthrough? And I'm going to talk about doing a walkthrough with young children. So make sure that you are very well prepared. Just don't grab a book off the shelf and read it as a filler. So read aloud should be purposeful and meaningful for student learning. So they should be part of the lesson plan. So when you're going to present a read aloud, it should be included in your lesson plan. And you want to make sure that your goals are clearly stated. If there's any vocabulary that you're going to introduce, you also include the vocabulary. Next is to set the mood. Set the mood for the story, and this is something very personal. You want to get the children in the mood to listen to the stories, and you want them to anticipate what's coming and be excited about what's coming. So depending on how you want to set your mood, it can be a cue that you give the students. It could be an area in the classroom where they know that they go sit for the read aloud. It can be any mood setting technique. And because we are not face-to-face right now, I'm going to set the mood with one of my favorite things, and that is candles. I have candles burning in my house all the time. So, whoops, let's try that again. Okay, so I'm going to begin my story. I'm going to set the mood, and I'm going to use it with my candle. Okay, now if you're in a classroom and you really can't use real candles, you might want to use a battery generated candle, or dim the lights, or have special lights around the area in which you're going to have the children sit. Anything that cues, calms, draws interest to what's going to happen. Then there's introducing the story, and this is really going to vary. Today I'm going to do a walkthrough with you to introduce the story to young children. I'm going to introduce a topic that can become complex, so it can reach all different levels of readers. Then in addition to that, you want to think about if you're going to have post activities for the reading. And this is not required. The reading could simply be for enjoyment purposes. However, you can tie a post activity to that. And I'm going to do that today in your module. You're going to watch this video, listen to the story, and then at the end of the story, I will explain the post activity that we're going to engage in. Okay, boys and girls, today we are going to read a story about a very interesting career. And I have picked this story today for a couple of reasons. One, my husband used to have this job before he became a teacher. I'm going to flip-flop back to my role as the teacher to you, and my role is teaching you about this strategy. So now I'm going to flip back to myself as your professor, and I'm going to talk about connecting it to your personal life. So I bring my husband into it, constantly thinking about ways I can connect with my students, make myself personable, show the children that I have people in my life, they have jobs, they have careers. So it makes you more of a real person to your students, especially your very young learners, right? I remember days when I would be at the grocery store and when I taught kindergarten, and my kindergartners would be very surprised to see me in the grocery store because they thought I lived at school, right? That I was always there. I was their stable person at school, so I must always be at school, right? And that's developmentally appropriate. They are egocentric in not a bad thing, but the world revolves around them, and they have a very clear understanding about the world and how it relates to them. And a teacher is a teacher at school. That is a person who is at school and only at school. So it surprises them when they see the teacher outside of the school environment. But these kinds of interactions, these kinds of little side stories help them to relate to that. Okay, so let's go back to the book again that I'm going to read to you today. So I might introduce my story by presenting something to them like this. If I said to them that I'm going to read a very short book about a person, a job, and so I might show them the picture and I'll say, boys and girls, take a look at this book. And the title is Aerospace Engineering. Engineering. So that's a really interesting word. So I'm going to write that up on our board. Engineering. Engineering, boys and girls, starts with what letter? E. Engineering. And in this word, it makes that sound. So if I put engineer, and we're going to think about what does engineer mean. And remember I told you that my husband used to be an engineer. I wonder what engineers do. Now there's lots of kinds of engineers. And today we're going to read about an aerospace engineer. So let's take a look at the front cover of this book. Now I already told you that it's about aerospace engineering. Now those are two pretty big words, aerospace and engineering. So take a look at this picture. This picture is going to give you some clues about what kind of engineer this might be. I must take a step back. So you would generate some questions for the children depending on your group of children and your knowledge of the children. And you might ask them, can you tell me by raising your hand what ideas you have about what an engineer might be? Just based on this picture, what's an aerospace engineer? Now that's one technique. With the younger children, kindergartners and first graders, you're typically going to get shout outs. They're going to shout out, they're going to yell out, right? If you want them to think a little bit more, you want to ask them to turn to your partner. Now, many teachers will set up partners prior to a read aloud so that the students have a partner, they sit next to their partner, and they know they're going to do a think, pair, share or a modified think, pair, share with their partner. Turn to your partner and each of you say what you think an aerospace engineer, and where did you get that clue? Lots of times they're going to pick up on airplane. It must be an airplane, or the pilot's hat, right? Or the rocket ship that you see here, right? And when they share those ideas, you're going to say, you're going to reinforce that their awareness of what's happening in the pictures, okay? So that, yeah, it might have something to do with airplanes and rocket ships. And here he's wearing a pilot hat, right? So then for a walkthrough, before you begin reading, you're going to walk through the book with them. Let's look here. We see a bird, and we see a little boy or girl. We really can't tell, right? Looking at the bird, and they have this hat on. What kind of hat do you think that is? Let's go, and this is before we do any reading. And then the bird, what's happening here? And the children might say, the bird is flying, and the child is looking at the bird. And then what do you think is happening on this page? What happens here? And they might say the bird is landing on his finger. And then if you go here, this might confuse them a little. Some children will be able to read, and somebody might say that's the word air. Must be air is going over the wings, or maybe not. Maybe they said, well, they're putting an arrow over the wings. But any idea is an okay idea at this point. This is just a walkthrough to get them used to the story, okay? And then you look at the next picture. What's happening here? What is the bird doing? And they're going to yell out their different ideas. And then you go to this page, and you might say to the students, look at what's happened here. What does the child, and here you want to avoid saying he or she, because it could be a male or a female. So I just caution you on always jumping to the male. I know that I do that a lot, so I try to catch myself, right? If it's not gender specific, you want to use the term they rather than, or the child rather than he or she. And then they might say, the child has an airplane. They say, wait a minute, we had a bird and an airplane. Why do you think there's a bird and an airplane in this story? Just to generate some questions, try to make them use some higher level thinking, right? So applying their background knowledge, whatever knowledge that they might have, to the story. Oh my goodness, look what's happening here. What is this airplane doing? They're going to yell out some ideas. Now, it just kind of depends on you. I don't mind children yelling out ideas, because I think more children tend to respond that way rather than me requiring a quiet raised hand. In a read aloud, it does not matter to me that they're being quiet when I'm doing the walkthrough, the picture walk. I want their ideas to get out there, right? So it does not bother me that they yell out. There might be some teachers that it bothers, and you might want to have a different kind of classroom climate or rules or regulations that you might have. But I caution you not to put too many rules on the read aloud, that children really should feel a connection to the literature and really be excited when they start the read aloud. Okay. Oh my goodness, what's different about these pages, right? What happened in our sky? And they're going to pick up, it's nighttime. And look at the picture. We have the bird is back, and then we have the airplane down here, and the child is sitting down, looking up at the sky. What's in the sky? Stars and the moon. And then here, look at this. What do we have here? What is that bird wearing? Why does that bird have that on his head and is looking at this rocket ship? And then they might give their ideas. What are your ideas? What's happening in the story? What do you think might happen next? What do you think might happen next? And here we see the bird in the rocket ship. And then the rocket ship goes off into space, right? And these are all ideas coming from the children. You would say, what is happening in the rocket ship? What happened to the rocket ship? Where is the child in the picture? What's the child doing? And then say, okay, are you ready to read our story? So let me just take a little sip of water. And let's read our story. Aerospace engineering. Now this is a collection of board books, and they're used for young children. I've used them in kindergarten as well. They're fantastic. Simple, but complex concepts. Hello, bird. Bird can fly. How does bird fly? So this is written in a format where children could begin to read the words themselves. She has wings. The top of her wing is curved. The bottom of her wing is flat. And here as a teacher, you can ask all kinds of questions or no questions. Okay, I could ask, why do you think the top is curved and the bottom is flat? And this word says air. What's happening to the air here? And get the ideas from your children. It really kind of depends on their background. If you have a child whose parent is a pilot or an aerospace engineer or works for the airline, they might have some ideas already. Bird flaps her wings. Swoosh. Now here I like to have the children read with me these words. Swoosh. Let's say all that together. Swoosh. They begin to learn how to read expressively, because oftentimes if you've ever worked with children with reading, they tend to read very flat and with very little expression. You want to teach them to read with expression. And they lift her into the air. Goodbye, bird. Wings help an airplane fly too. Does an airplane flap its wings? Wait for a response. I tend not to ask too many questions when I'm reading. I want to get through the book. I don't want to break their concentration and their love just to hear the story. If you interject too many questions, sometimes you lose student interest. No, it has engines. The engines help the plane go fast, fast, fast. Then the wings lift the plane into the air. If bird wants to see outer space, her wings cannot take her there. Sorry, bird. An airplane cannot take her there either. Bird needs a rocket. A rocket has a big engine. Fuel plus oxygen plus heat equals gas. Hot gas shoots from the rocket. Vroom. The rocket zooms up, up, up to outer space. Have fun, bird. The end. And this says science. Birds can fly. How does bird fly? Explore the fascinating physics of flight, from birds to airplanes to rockets. Vroom. And that ends our story for today. And so I bring it to a close. Move my candle. So any kind of closure, right? So the students are at an end. Closure is really important for children, and we'll talk about that as we go through this class. So now we have concluded the story. And for the follow-up activity, remember, I would say to the students, remember this word engineer? You're going to become engineers yourself. And I am going to give you an engineering challenge. Now, these are called engineering design briefs, and I have downloaded some design briefs, and I want you to think of a story or a nursery rhyme or a song that you could create an engineering design brief about. And I will have another video on engineering design briefs that are connected to this particular reading. Like I said before, you don't need to have a follow-up activity for a book. It can be just a book for enjoyment. I will provide readings of different genres for different ages of children throughout this class, and I will post them for you to kind of observe and reflect on and kind of just think about, how might I do the opening? How might I do the read aloud? How might I do the closing? And what kind of literature am I going to choose? And how am I going to make those choices? All right, have a great day until our next story time. Bye-bye.